Buenos días, Jackie.
Ya, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están? Oh, yo hablo bien español para toda la gente que quiere escuchar este podcast. Venga, escuchan. Hago mi café ahora.
Podemos hablar en español hoy.
Vamos a hablar
¿Por
en
qué
español
no?
bien, ¿por qué no? Estoy haciendo mi cafecito.
Oh, yo tengo mi café. Todo es
Qué
bueno.
bueno, casi está listo. This is the kitchen that is the size of a rectangle.
The size of a rectangle.
I mean, like, so,
JB, do you think that this is a good look for me? Do you think that I'm the kind of guy who could get away with just having like weird glasses? Like, am I a weird glasses guy? Do I have a level of sort of intelligence and gravitas as a person that no matter how silly my glasses are, it's okay? Is
well, you
that
have a.
where I'm at as a human?
I think I would only say yes because you have a doctorate. People just have to be
I would need to continuously remind people of that, and then but
right,
I don't like that. I don't.
right. Well, because the gravitas just speaks for itself. I gotta get a coaster otherwise.
I suppose that's how it should be. Any chance you could like get your shit together this morning, Jackie, and
Well, it was
get
here.
ready for this get
There
ready
were
for this
two. There were
podcast?
two. There were two
Do you
choices.
need to get do you need to hop in the shower real quick? Do you need
No,
to
I'm good there. No, I'm good.
can we watch you take out your garbage or anything before we
No, no,
no?
no,
You
no,
sure?
definitely.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just opening my Karen Driscoll bio.
Do you want to talk about some of it? Karen Driscoll is our guest this morning, and she is an opera director.
Yeah,
I've also seen her perform as a soloist in concert several times. So she's quite a talent, and now she's got a what I think is a sort of newly developed position at MSU. So
mhm.
we're going to talk to her about that. We're going to talk to her about being, working in a university, being on a voice faculty, transitioning sort of into opera direction, and what that's been like. Do you want to sport some of your bio? What do you got on her?
Here are some things that we can know about Karen Driscoll.
Karen
So,
Driscoll.
of course, she has appeared throughout North America. Um, in it says title roles Massenet's Manon for Florida Grand Opera,
Mm-hmm.
Florentine Opera, l'Opera de Montreal,
Oui.
Virginia Opera, oui, oui. Don't come at me for my French accent, please. Baltimore Opera, Seattle Opera, Lyric
Yeah.
Opera of Kansas City. We're still going. National Lyric Opera, DeCapo Opera, Vancouver Opera, Opera Saskatchewan. I'd love to know how she did all of this. This is amazing.
Jesus,
Um,
I feel like I need a to do a vocal warm up before we admit her in here.
yeah, I know. She's gonna talk about like my vocal fry. I'm sure. I know it's there.
Shall we
It's,
let her in?
oh, she's here. She's ready.
Yeah.
We'll ask her more about all of this. Yes, yeah. Let her in.
I'm gonna have her diagnose all of your vocal problems real quick.
Oh God, she's gonna know I have big tonsils.
Hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, how are you? It's great to see you.
It's warm outside.
A
It
little
is.
disconcerting, right?
Yeah. I'm ready to do
It's
the switch over for
it's
for the
November.
I know.
Mhm.
So this is Jackie. I don't know Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
Yeah.
Hi.
You may
Hello.
have crossed paths in the hallways of MSU. We were just talking about
Possibly.
Um,
Possibly, but I don't think we've had a like stop and say hi kind of moment.
yeah, it
Or
could
what
not have
was
been.
your
Probably not.
area?
I was a flute performance major during my undergrad, and then I went back a little later for my MAT.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So I was studying with Susan Palma when I was at Montclair
Okay,
and
excellent.
doing a bunch of
Yeah,
other stuff.
And Marty and I go way, way back, right?
Yeah.
sure. Gosh.
I know it's been a
Um,
long time. I've been at MSU a really long time. Did you know that?
well,
Yeah,
I
I
started
think
there. Well, I did my master's 2009 and 10, and then started on the faculty 2011. So that was 13 years ago.
Yeah, that's when I started 13 years ago.
Oh, so we came at the same time. I didn't know that.
Exactly.
2011.
Wait, no, 2000. Wait, is that 13 years? 11,
Yeah.
24. Yeah, I guess so.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when I graduated high school in 2010, and then that's when I started at
Oh,
Montclair State.
tell me that.
So I was there at that time.
What I was your age?
Oh my goodness. How are you?
I'm all right.
Besides too
There's a
warm.
lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot going on.
I know.
yeah. So, yeah, we just do the best that we can every single day, every single hour,
That's
um,
right.
uh, and figure out where the rest lies, you know? Um,
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about some happy things for this hour.
Karen Driscoll's life.
Music, and specifically
Yes,
Karen Driscoll's career and
yes,
opera and
and career.
and teaching voice at the university level, which is a huge part of this that I feel like we should talk about because I feel like these collegiate vocal programs are primarily training for operas these days.
yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So I think those two kind of go hand in hand, right?
yeah. So you got to let me know when you're starting, or if we're still just
Oh, we record all
started.
the preambles and
Oh,
then
we record it all,
yeah.
and then Marty chops it up and makes it good.
Got it. Okay. So first of all, yeah. Some background, which is just kind of like where most students start. Where I started in music education,
Yeah.
and I was at the University of Cincinnati Conservatory. And when I started my journey, I was just like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. And then I said to my parents, oh, I want to be a performer. And they were like, no,
Mm.
no, why would you do such a
Mm.
thing? And because I had a big, my dad was a chemical engineer, and I have a
Oh,
big
yeah.
engineering background. In fact, I was all set to go to engineering school until I said, I want to be a musician. And that just like, oh, because neither of my parents read music, know music, nothing. So it was
Yeah.
an anomaly in my family. But the thought process was get a real degree and go in education. And
Mhm.
I was lucky enough that at the school that I was in, they were super supportive of being involved in as many things as possible. That in
Mm.
fact, within 2 years, they said, "Do you want to be a performance major?" And I said no because I was
Wow.
going to carve out the path
Interesting.
to have the best of both worlds. And so anything that wasn't supported in my education
Yeah.
degree, I was going to add on in my undergraduate, which actually I very much encourage at the university that I'm at.
Mm.
As a teacher, I see voices, I hear voices, I don't see majors. And if you're going to teach, you need to know how to sing. If you know how to sing, you need to know how to teach.
Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
don't, it's kind of
Yes,
silly to put people in lanes
Sure,
for
sure.
that and
I
keep the
say
ball.
this a lot. Yep.
Yeah, right. So, did my undergrad education, then went on to my master's, same institution, in vocal performance. Because I'm like, oh, I really like this. I didn't even know what opera was about until I got into a costume, and I was like, I'm sold. I'm
Yeah.
sold. Like once you get into a period costume, you're like, yeah, okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I was never the chosen child. I was never the first choice in anything.
Mm.
I was a good singer. I was a good actress. I was a mezzo, by the way. Now I'm a
Oh,
soprano.
interesting. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is interesting.
So then, when I was just about to graduate, I went up to the head of the opera and said, "You'd give everybody else nice comments about their voice, and I was just, like, could you tell me
Mm,
something about how you think about how I sing? He goes,
yeah.
well, I quite think that you have an ugly voice and that you're never going to make it in opera, but you'll be a good
Mm,
administrator someday. And I was like,
mm.
oh, oh, okay, and tears. And he's
Good.
like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Right? I just spent
Can we have a just a really quick disclaimer because I think this is helpful to hear, and I hope you'll agree with me.
God.
There are people in these sorts of positions who I've come to believe genuinely in their hearts believe that they are helping people when they say things like this. They because I've had conversations with people who are very sort of brutally honest like this,
Mhm.
and they will say things like, well, the whole world is just kind of, blowing sunshine and, just not telling them the truth. They deserve to have someone give them sort of, a realistic assessment and like I take it upon myself this responsibility of being the one honest voice in their ear. And I never quite knew what to think of that. There's so many people who progress at different places in their lives, and to tell a young person that they're just, well, you're not going to be able to do this and you're not going to make it. Can you maybe just address that a little bit? I feel like that just might be helpful, especially for people coming up.
I think so. I think that anybody that feels that they have the crystal ball to your future
Exactly.
they don't have the right to have a crystal ball to your future.
Yeah.
They are there to give you the best knowledge that they have of an industry and about trends, um,
Mm-hmm.
and about how, for me as an educator, I just know that there are just so many different levels of when you hit the ground. Some people mature faster than the others.
Right, right.
There's a component in performance, which is the actual performance that we don't get enough work at.
Mm,
Right? So we
sure.
have assessments, we have these other gatekeeping type things within academia that keep us on track with our learning process.
Yeah.
But performing is actually where we gain the most amount of knowledge about what it is that we do.
Yeah.
So how do we really know what I've had plenty of singers that have been great in the practice room and blah blah blah, and they get on stage and it's just like, hello, wait, like,
Mm,
putting all the forces together,
yeah.
everything together.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, like, I would never say to anybody you will or will not have anything. I
Right.
don't. I wish. Otherwise, I would go get the winning lottery tickets and just go off to an island. Um,
Epic.
and the world of singing, the world of music has changed drastically and
Yeah.
continues to change. And our best advice is just to stay safe, as flexible as possible.
Hmm.
And if you want to pursue this, you have to find a way to make those opportunities happen for you.
Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
I mean, there are character voices. There are so many different avenues.
Yeah.
So, what is the definition of success anyway?
Right.
To go to the Metropolitan Opera? I've had an extremely successul career,
Yeah.
and I only auditioned at the Met twice, but I didn't get in there. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't consider myself a failure. So,
Of course.
like,
Not
um,
by any stretch of the imagination. Or not after reading your bio. I was like, okay, this woman has done a lot of things.
Yeah.
well, but it's like, so you have to identify what it is that you feel that your success is.
Yeah.
And I think that projects are great for young singers, and those are a little bit more manageable and self-sustainable
Hmm.
than when you go out for auditions, and you got to do the auditions if that's your goal. But it was, for me, it was really hurtful to get that, as after 6 years of
I
studying.
can't imagine. Yeah.
But
Brutal.
Did
it
it light a
was,
fire under you
it
though? Did
did,
it?
it did. And
Yeah.
I doubled down. I thought, who's going to tell me what my future is? And I'll show
Yeah.
him, right?
Yeah.
And I did. I was just like,
Yeah.
"Ah," and then I ran out and I worked harder and I did more.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, gentlemen, was not incorrect about me because I am really good at managing
Hmm.
and doing all the directing things. He just it was information I wasn't ready for at the time,
Yeah,
Sure.
and I still don't subscribe to the like you're all or nothing kind of approach,
of
but it
course.
did light a fire. And I ran with it. And the first time I was reviewed in Opera News, I just kind of like sent that to him saying, just
Ah, yes, bravo.
hey,
Perfect. That's
Yes.
exactly the right thing to do.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it.
And of course, I mean, this is an area of music where you just have to have an incredibly thick skin and be able to take that criticism because, we all need to be told where our weaknesses are, right? Because we all have them. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but to just say outright like, well, you're no good. I mean,
oh,
you might have
outright
a weakness
ugly.
at this point in your life, or several weaknesses at this point in your development. But
Well,
yeah, that's great advice.
I think also that just giving an opinion isn't helpful
Hmm.
for somebody that's trying to figure out where the gaps are within their medium, right?
Yeah,
If
Right.
yeah.
somebody just says it's ugly, well,
Why?
How?
parts
Yeah,
of it,
right.
like the whole thing. And for me, as I said, I was singing mezzo, so that wasn't actually the sweet spot of my voice. I hadn't found it yet.
Mm.
I found it. Crazy story.
Yes.
You ready for a crazy story?
Always.
I
Always. Always.
no, no, and nobody can get away with this now. Okay, just saying.
Okay.
Um, as I graduated, I saw in an audition notice for a young artist program back in my day to send a videotape and for a soprano position down at Florida Grand Opera. And
Cool.
I did. I was like, I wouldn't. I knew I was going to switch voice types. I just hadn't yet, and I sent my videotape down, and they said, "Great, we want to hire you. Can you be here in a week?" I said, how about a week and a day? My master's recital's in a week.
Oh,
And
wow.
I sold everything that would not fit into my car.
Uh-huh.
I jumped into my car and I drove to Miami. I learned the role that I was going to sing for the
In
program
the car on the
in
way.
the car on the
Ah,
way.
brilliant.
The cassette
That's really
tape. Cassette
badass.
tape.
Yeah.
Um, and I arrived there. They said, "Oh, wonderful! We're right at your moment that you're being staged," because they had I was a last minute add in, and so I'm
Yeah.
like, I hadn't worked with an accompanist. I hadn't worked with anything. I
Yeah.
mean, for all the students, like, oh my gosh, I haven't had any ensemble time. I'm like, if you want to do it,
Hmm.
better get going.
That's right.
So I get in there, I do my rehearsal, I come out, they start talking to me. They said, okay, great. We have a concert in a week with orchestra. Could you give us your soprano rep? I went, um, well, about
About
that.
that.
I'm recently a soprano. Well, how recently? I'm like, how many hours from Cincinnati? Like 14, 20. Yeah, I was like,
Wow.
very recent. I and they were not happy with me, but they
Mm.
told me that they were so close to firing me, but I showed so much chutzpah. They were like, "Well, she's willing to like totally go for this," and that is something that you cannot teach somebody, by
That's
the way.
right. That's right.
And they're like, either she's going to be a complete failure and or she will just rise and just keep pushing through. Luckily, I was on the other side of that, but it was like, whoo, you can't do it today. But yeah, I pretty much lied my way through the first young artist program. But
Hey, there are a lot of success stories that start with a little dishonesty on the resume. And
it wasn't. I wasn't dishonest on the resume. I just it
Hadn't
made
found it yet.
yeah, yeah.
Hadn't found your
Uh,
voice type yet.
it's such a common thread that we're already seeing in these first few episodes that no college, no teacher, no young artist program is going to do for you in your career what you will do for yourself
Mhm.
if you have that chutzpah, perfect word.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
Great
gotta
word.
go for it. The one thing I will say is like the only person that can really define you is you. So if you say you can't do it, you're like there are so many reasons why you can't do something, but you
Yeah.
just find that one reason why you can and just keep pushing forward through it.
That's
And
beautiful. Yeah.
I'm like, we're already full of self-doubt.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like, so what if you do fail at
Hmm.
something?
Hmm.
What's the big deal? Nothing is going to be so catastrophic that a hole opens up and you fall in and you never get out. I mean, like life moves on. People are interested in you, but you are not the center of their world either. So
Right, right.
center of your world and make the best choices that you can. But sometimes you're going to make a bump in the road here.
Absolutely.
It's
And
okay.
would you say that the bumps in that you've had along the way have shaped your career and brought you to where you are now? I mean, what happened once you found your soprano voice?
Yeah, then you got to figure out which kind of soprano because we know how many flavors there are of that.
Hmm.
How
And
many flavors are there of that? I'm a flutist. I like to sing. I
Jackie's a
know
good
the
singer.
basics.
She's a good mezzo.
I did sing in chorale. Like I know the basics with Dr. Buchanan. I know the basics. But yeah, I know there's coloratura, um, uh, lyric.
Lyric. Well,
Oh,
dramatic lyric.
oh, oh, oh. See, now I'm done. That's it. I know
there
two.
there are and there's coloratura, there's lyric coloratura, there's lyric, there's dramatic, there's spinto, there are
Oh,
all kinds of things.
oh
And
wow.
so, and if you're lucky,
Hmm.
you get to kind of experience many of those flavors as you get older because the voice changes and
Hmm.
all of that. And so I tried them all out. It's you got your favorite pair of shoes eventually, and I ended up starting off as a lyric soprano with an extension of coloratura. So
Hmm.
yeah, there's even a micro progression of that.
Hello.
I did a lot of French repertoire because that really suited my voice, and
Hmm.
then developed into a fuller lyric soprano, and even went into Wagner repertoire. So I went from French repertoire, Mozart, Puccini, and then back to Handel, and then Wagner. So you want to be
Hmm.
as versatile as possible as a singer and well as a musician in general.
Hmm.
Right.
My greatest advice though to students is if they're willing to hire you, take it.
Oh yeah.
Um, the best advice. Um, I have had so many opinions about my voice in my entire life. It's very bright. It's very dark. It's it's there are just so many things that two people could be sitting in this right next to each other and somebody thinks that's the darkest voice I've ever heard and the other person's like oh my gosh it has so much ping and brightness and you're like
Wow. Yeah.
how is that possible? But all I need to do as a singer is sing my voice.
Right.
I don't need to
Of course.
make it sound like something else. I sing with my voice, and I'm not going to emulate what an old Wagnerian singer sounds like.
Sure.
My
Right.
job is to be heard across the orchestra.
Hmm. Yeah.
And same way with any other repertoire, sing with your voice, and make sure that you can get the right acoustical responsibility to the piece
Yeah.
and to the
Yeah.
space. And those are very important things to learn as a musician as well, because not every space that you sing in or anything,
Yeah. Could
have
you
to be.
talk a little bit about some of the things that you learned on stages as in actual performance as a singer? Just some things that you took away from particular operas or particular performances. Are there anything that things that stick out?
Yeah, there are a variety of things. As a performer, I think that it's important that you understand that your responsibility is to make the audience feel something they didn't feel before they moved in that they
Mm.
came in that night.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether they're coming from a long day of work or taking care of their kids, your job is to transport them to another time period, to another musical
Mm.
world. And if you don't, you haven't done your job
Mm.
fully.
Jackie, she
it,
answered your magic question.
is it?
Well,
Yeah.
Jackie asks this at the end.
Ah,
What is your job in
Oh,
music? Yeah.
oh, what is
yeah.
my
But
job? I'm
you've
sorry, I
answered it
stopped.
Yeah.
beautifully.
No, that was a
That's
perfect. That
perfect.
was
Yeah.
literally perfect. I didn't even have to ask. You
Exactly.
said it. But that, yes, yeah, we always want to know that. But I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Who can say? How many people can say they get to do that for their job?
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And I also love the fact that, when I was singing on the stage, I got a break from being me. I
Yeah.
mean, I like me, but I like being somebody else for 2.5 to 3 hours.
Mm.
Why
And
not?
the freedom that you have as a performer to really submerge yourself into something like that is incredibly liberating. The most terrifying thing for me to do is sing, sorry, Marty, in concerts and recitals because I am me.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I actually have to trick myself to thinking of performer me, not me,
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I will get nervous and I still do get nervous.
Mhm.
But being in costume and being transformed can
Yeah.
also help
Yeah.
me transform the audience and how they're being involved in my performance. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
the things that I learned on stage are that acoustic responsibility. It takes a lot to
Hmm.
really efficiently send sound across an orchestra through a wall.
Yeah.
And there are techniques to that, and you have to find sweet acoustic spots on stage.
Mm.
You have to make sure that you are finding the correct formants, which are these acoustical sweet spots of your voice
Yeah.
that are efficient while still sending plenty of sound.
Hmm.
And in today's modern convention, the halls have gotten so large that the operas were never intended to have such a physical
Yeah. Yeah.
responsibility as well. So we are very much like athletes.
Sure.
The show that taught me the most was Manon in
Ooh.
uh, at Florida Grand Opera, which is a very long opera. Long. I had to eat during that show because I was burning so many calories.
I don't doubt that.
Five,
Yeah.
yeah, 5 costume changes, 5 wig changes.
Oh
I
my
go,
God.
and I'm like, and I get to die at the end, which everybody knows is my favorite thing in the whole wide world. Just,
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you love to die as a character?
yeah. No, everyday life. I'm resurrected. I'm kidding.
Wow.
So would you say, because you've spoken about this opera company, you said Florida Grand Opera, and so would you say that this role in particular, this opera, did it shape or catapult your career moving forward after this? After this, I feel like, was this when you sort of became a soprano in the field?
Actually, the cool thing about the young artist program there back in that time is that opera companies really invested in um, the trajectory of a singer.
Mm.
City
Mm.
Opera in New York City used to be the feeder opera company into the Met, and there
Right.
was
Right.
a
Right.
lot of support in building a singer's career. So before I even got to do Manon down in Florida Grand, I'd gone through about 3 other smaller roles, Musetta and Berta in Barbara Seville
Mm.
and some other small type things. Although Musetta is not small, that's like what we call a cash cow because Bohem's done so much. If you can just drop and go for those.
Yeah.
Um, so it's, the career catapult. I, I don't know that I had a career catapult. I was known for my acting and then singing. And so my
Mm.
commitment to characters and people were really interested what I was able to do um, acting wise and transformative because we're coming out of many a stand and sing type singer, and I was like rolling on the floor and on my back, and I loved the physicality
Yeah.
of everything, and so I just I again I picked up if you offered me the role, I was like yes, and then I figured it out later. Manon just was a favorite role of mine, but I think I sang Musetta more than anything else. I sang Mimi quite a bit,
Hmm.
and I sang Tatiana and Eugene Onegin. Um, Learning Russian on it was a special skill as well. No, I tried. I loved everything. I just wanted it. The thing that made me a little sad from
Hmm.
academia to professional life is that you get tracked pretty early. You're in an opera world or you're in a concert world. And
Yeah.
now in this stage of my life, because I have so much academic work, I don't
Yeah.
have more than a month to go away for a gig, which is four
Oh,
to
true. Right. Right.
um, concert work fits into my schedule. But when I get asked about certain repertoire, they're like, "Of course you know that." I'm like, I don't. So I'm taking on the challenge of learning new music, which I love.
Hmm.
Of
Old,
course.
but in the concert world. And I'm like, why didn't I know really more about this earlier for me?
Yeah.
So it's great. The first time I sang The Creation, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just an opera, but
Yeah.
I have to be me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, or not me, I guess.
Yes
Um,
and no. Yes and
yes,
no, I feel.
Eve. I just get to wear a pretty gown. That's all instead of a cloak.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kat, the put your head down and get your work done. And networking
Yeah. Yeah.
is super important because it's never about the gig that you have, it's the next one,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
about proving yourself to be rehired and then to have a good reputation to say, hey, oh my gosh, she's really reliable. She shows up on time. By the way, I didn't say the best singer. She's reliable and she shows up on time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
she
I've heard often that it's about how you are in the in the performance setting. For me as a wind player, that's definitely true. You
Yeah.
show up,
Yeah.
you're easy to work with, you don't complain. You can, as Tony Mazzocchi would say, you can hang.
Well, yeah.
That's what he told me like years ago,
Yeah.
and I never forgot it because it's true.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and Marty, you probably have that same like you have go-to people because you don't have to stress as a person in a leadership position now, right? And
Absolutely. And it's yeah.
um, it's not so much about like I only want to hire my friends. I want to hire the people that create the least amount of stress in my life with
That's
the
right.
great ROI, which is return on your investment for me.
Yep.
Big time.
And, like that's the sweet spot
Yeah.
because if it's unbalanced, then that person driving the larger picture, it just becomes extra heavy for them
Yeah.
to carry that load.
No, that's 100% true. And I think any conductor, any contractor, any director feels the same way. That if you've got two people and, one person's this talented and one person is this talented, or one person's career is in this spot and the other person's career is in this spot, but this person's the cooler person, the nicer person, the smaller ego, the more passionate, that person will always get the gig over the person who's, a little bit or just nominally better. And I'm doing air quotes for the
Yeah.
pod sphere.
And
Yeah.
as I said, I when I was in college, I was never the first chosen for anything, but I was
Yeah.
the first to raise my hand if they needed something to be done.
Yeah, that's huge.
Reliable,
Yeah. Yeah.
reliable,
Yeah.
reliability.
Music super fast.
Hmm.
And there was a moment they were doing a new recording of a Schubert opera in college, and the girl dropped out 3 days before the recording process. German, they're like, Karen, can you learn it? I'm like, yes,
Sure.
That's right.
of course. German, my favorite. And I I learned it for the recording in front of a German conductor who is that's terrifying.
Yes, always.
I can imagine.
I go back and listen to it and I'm like, oh, but I
Yeah.
did it. I did it, and I established a reputation of she'll get it done, and that has been something that has always been with me.
That's
I
huge.
never in my career if I was not if I was the fill in if somebody got sick last minute fill in. I never thumbed my nose that I didn't get the first ask on it because at the end of the day, the review was mine, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like nobody's
right,
going to look back on my newspaper reviews from 10, 20 years ago and say, you know, she wasn't the first choice on that.
right.
Nobody cares. Like you're responsible at that moment. Go do it.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No sour spots. So
Right.
Mm, yeah. So how many years did you strictly perform?
I still perform.
Strictly
Of
perform.
course, strictly, of course, which is why I said strictly
I
only.
You know, it's so funny, Jack. Every time I think I'm done now. I'm good. And I love giving information for the next generation. Then somebody up pops up or people are like, "Oh my gosh, you should still be singing, like actively. Why are you in academia?" And this, that, and the
Mhm.
other. And I think that one of the hardest things that the next generation has coming forward for them is finding consistent work and finding a world that they can
Hmm.
still feed themselves and
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah.
what they do. And academia started for me again since I was an education major at the beginning. There was always a line there for me
Yeah.
about how I wanted to find a profession in teaching and singing. So there was a good 20 years that I was singing quite consistently. But the market crash that happened um, in the 2000s,
2008.
yeah, really had a big impact on my career
Me
because,
too.
aha, um,
Interesting.
people from the Met were going into regional companies. Regional companies, if you had the choice between me or somebody that sings at the Met, they're like, oh, the Met, the Met, the Met.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then so those A-level regional companies push down the singers to B-level and C-level companies, and there are many, many levels of
Mm.
companies within the industry. Um, and so that we talked about before, the return on the investment, 4 weeks for $1,000, you start looking the balance of I'm losing money, even though my
Yeah,
trajectory was going, like I hit these companies and I got to A-level companies. The world around us has a great bearing upon the success of the arts organizations.
sure.
And so, um, as
Yes.
oh yeah, that crash happened around us. It just for the upward trajectory for me, I hit a ceiling, and then I had to pivot because I wanted to feed myself and I wanted more.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm fascinated with the business world because I think
Yeah.
that being a musician is also running a small business. So
Yeah,
you
you are
need
your own
Million
business.
percent. Million percent. That is true.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think people realize that going into it. They don't realize how that even Marty and I really think we are navigating this new podcast world in such a way, or at least trying to.
well, the
The most
cool thing,
casual business on planet Earth.
podcasting is not as easy as everybody thinks it is, by the way, because I dipped my toe in that world, right?
Um,
Um,
yeah.
when I came back to the city, I worked for the chairman of neurosurgery at Weill Cornell College. I know,
What?
I know.
What
It's
You
have you
really are
not
a jack
done?
of a jack of.
Yeah,
What's the female version of a Jane of all trades?
Jane of
uh,
all trades.
yeah.
Queen, a queen, I would say. Just let's just say that.
It was so cool because I also love medicine, and I was like, oh, there's so much to know about the brain, and I got to learn really cool things. And I actually helped him on some presentations about how the brain interacts because of
Ooh,
my
yeah,
brain. So these are transferable skills. As an
of
artist,
course.
the there's a whole world out of there that's waiting for you to bring your transferable skills to them. And what comes
Oh, that's
easy
so smart.
to
Yeah,
you
yeah, right.
doesn't come easily to everybody else. Communication skills and organization, self-starting, responsibility, all of these things that we demand of ourselves as musicians. So the connection that I had with him, eventually, he developed a podcast and he needed a voiceover person. He
Mm.
said, "Well, you're a voiceover. You could do the voiceover." And I ended up in this other side business of vetting candidates for podcasts in different neurological mediums. So we've got
Wow.
sleep studies and children with concussions and just all of these different things. And I got to be on the podcast side of editing and looking at transcripts and
Wow.
cutting
Yeah.
content
Hmm.
after production and how many takes on a voiceover that you're like, oh, ew, voiceover work is not easy.
Yes.
Gosh. So Karen, so you've got this incredible sort of multidisciplinary mind and engineering oriented mind.
Amazing.
How has that sort of transferred into this sort of newer facet of your career of now sort of taking over the opera program and directing these operas? I mean, obviously, opera, musical theater, so multifaceted, so much going on. It just like filmmaking. I mean, there's so many different pieces that all have to go into it, that all have to be successful. Let's shift gears a little bit just into that world and talking about operas and production and all of that beautiful stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Musical theater, opera, is where it all comes together, right? Like, we've got this, the orchestra component, we've
Hmm.
got the acting, we've got the singing, we've got even some dancing that comes in. And if
Yeah,
everybody knows who I am as a director, I want them to move.
yeah.
And sometimes I attempt choreographing. I figure if I can do it, then the average singer can do it. So
Mm.
my choreography is manageable, but there are quite a few funny outtakes of me attempting things, and my husband does find it quite entertaining as I'm attempting to stage things in my little lofty space here.
And you make him do things, I hope.
My cats come in.
Your cat's coming. Okay, sure.
I'm surprised the cats
Yay.
like us.
Mine just, he walked by right before. Yeah, he made a cameo. I don't know if it got picked up, but he
No, I
meowed.
didn't see it.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
I
All
didn't.
right, good. He meowed. It was loud. I don't know.
Um, so
Awesome.
the production aspect of it is taking that analytical side
Yeah.
and leading everybody to success. And again, it's like finding that great challenge and being flexible enough within the process to navigate the twists and turns. And this chapter of my life has been really interesting because for the things that I feel that I'm very good at, I never knew fill in the blank. I never knew that
Mm.
people can just leave without any regard to an entire production. And you're like, who would do that?
Yeah.
Um, the things that are responsible as a performer, um, that same kind of expectation doesn't live in every single person. And I'm like, wow, I have such high expectations for myself. I want
Mm.
them for everybody else. And sometimes it doesn't always happen that way. But then,
Yeah.
okay, either how do you reach further in to make sure that you're bringing everybody up at that same work ethic
Hmm.
um, and navigating, or trying to find some flexibility within the process,
Sure.
which I've learned a lot about because I might be a control freak. I just might.
Yeah.
And but you do want somebody um, in production to have that, let's just call foresight of
Yeah, absolutely.
anticipating issues down the road.
Yeah.
You're
Uh,
a director.
Yeah.
If you're not a little type A, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't be a director. It's the right, it seems
it's
like the right personality type for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really about staying ahead of and negotiating those pitfalls in the process and finding the three solutions before they need to be solutions. And
Mm.
Mm,
that keeps you sane most of the time.
Yeah.
And that I love bringing it all together because it's just again, back to where we started in all of this, our job is to transform and to make the audience feel something.
Right, right.
Um, that they didn't feel before they came in. So if all things aren't firing to
Hmm.
create that
Hmm.
atmosphere, then we haven't done our job. Musically, the pit, how we interact with that music, text painting, how we're stylizing a gesture, how we're committing to something. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
because I've been on stage, I can give that information to the next generation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I've been in the world of in administration, I can manage the back end of the other non-artistic people.
Right.
Um, and so it was a natural progression for me to make my worlds collide.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and, at the end of the day, if you can still have passion for what you do and keep building your curiosity, um, and learning something new,
Yeah.
then you stay young, you stay
Sure.
relevant, you stay interested in everything that you do. So you kind of you just want to keep working daily at finding those connections and
Hmm.
how to just kind of make your world a little bit wider and richer.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of these dialogues that you've had with orchestra conductors and lighting designers and sound designers and choreographers? I mean, again, there's so many different pieces of this operatic puzzle that, like you
Yeah.
said, all have to be firing on all five cylinders. And could imagine that sometimes there are some creative differences, and you want each sort of department head and each local director to be expressing themselves artistically as well. But at the end of the day, there's a director with a sort of singular vision, and I'm sort of quite familiar on what that looks like on the film side, but not so much how that looks on the opera side.
Yeah, so one is to always be strategic and success oriented. We want to find solutions to everything. So we can uh, delve into what's not working,
Hmm.
but if we don't stay solutions oriented, then you get stuck in the muck. Whether it's
Yeah,
a director that has a vision that can't be realized by the scenic designer, a
yeah.
choreographer that has a vision that the singers can't dance to because
Hmm.
they're working out vocal technique.
Yeah.
The lighting designer has limitations within a theater that they didn't understand or might want to adjust. You have to know enough about everything within a leadership role, although you
Hmm.
cannot be an expert at everything.
Yeah.
I try, but like there's a limit.
Hmm.
Like I know enough about dance to know that that's not going to work for a singer. It might work for a dancer, but it's not going to work for a singer.
Yeah.
Um, Me as a director, just from that director side versus a producer or the head of the department, um, I approach everything with, what do you think about this as a possible solution versus that doesn't work?
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Yeah.
so you'll get a little further by, and this actually comes from my education background, which is you start with something nice, you sneak in the spinach,
Yes.
and you go back to nice again, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I really
Compliment
like,
sandwich. Yeah.
yes, the compliment sandwich.
Yeah.
Um, I really like where you're going with this. But I was wondering, instead of this, the solution, do you think that this would be a possible solution, leading them to make it a realization of their vision
Yeah.
versus imposing just your way only?
Sure.
You'll get
Sure.
a little bit further and you stretch yourself a little bit too by trying to step into their, for a choreographer, shoes,
Yeah.
right? Lighting designer, great. I love your vision, but we have limited resources. Our singers are going to be pulled down stage because of their youth.
Hmm.
So we're not going to be utilizing what your big scene, to have them all lit up towards the back of the stage because we can't hear them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something stage directors too. I get very involved at the onset, looking at the scenic design
Yeah.
because again, we have young voices. And
Right.
I was just in a discussion the other day. The director asked me, "What do you think about this?" I said, "Who's singing it?" And I was like, "I would suggest that they are on the stairs, kind of leading down and not on the back,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they just haven't developed the carrying skills in the voice yet."
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that makes
Right.
sense. You have to
Yeah.
work with what you have to work with what you have,
Yeah. Yeah.
and make sure that everyone is that in a way everyone is accommodated. I mean, to perform their best. I imagine I've been in a pit orchestra for an opera, actually, I think two at MSU.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of moving parts.
There are, and for singers, we're having to navigate these two little vocal folds and crossing our fingers.
Yeah.
Take a breath, and we're basically like, I hope it goes. Instrumentalists, sorry, I know you take a breath, but at least when you put your
If you
fingers
press
down,
the
you're
right
gonna have,
button, the right
right?
pitch comes out.
I know,
Fair, fair.
I know that at least it's gonna be that note. Um,
You hope, yeah.
Gross oversimplification, but
and so
technically accurate, I guess.
So the things that need to be built in, and the cool part about opera is when, again, back to the costumes, and that has a
Mm.
big bearing on singing too. Because if you're in a corset,
Yeah,
if
God,
you're in a
yeah.
heel, your center gets taken in a different direction. The way that you interpret a laced sleeve gesture has a responsibility to the costume designer now. And
Mm.
so you're using different parts of your body and angles. And so kind of putting all of those systems together while watching a conductor, hopefully. Um,
Hopefully.
maybe some of us
We dream. We dream.
didn't always look at the conductor,
I
but
look up. I always look
Jackie
up.
Jackie is a good looker. She's a
I
looker.
look all the time.
we're not supposed to look, but we're supposed to look.
Glance,
You're not
like
supposed to look, you're supposed to see. Isn't that what I'm saying?
glance, peer, if you will.
Well, and that's a special skill too, right?
Yeah, it's like reading a teleprompter.
Yeah.
Exactly. How do I not make my eyes move while I'm seeing everything come within there? And singers are tasked with this, like having a visual, having an aural, having a physical, having all
Yeah,
kinds of things.
sure.
A crazy director having people do push-ups while they're singing, and you're like, how is it possible? It is. It's
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
Um, you just have to navigate that in. But the production side, it's people management. It's making sure that you listen
Yeah.
about what it is that's being asked. And if it's not clear, then they're not clear.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you're talking over them, you're not really listening.
Right.
If you're defending your choice, you're not listening. Uh,
Mm.
Hmm.
at the end of the day, everybody has to work together and
Yeah, yeah.
have that like-minded success, because this art form demands everybody to be on the same
Well,
page.
and I think especially because nowadays, opera has moved into this realm of sort of modernization, meaning you're taking these older operas and taking them out of their original time periods, putting them into
Hmm.
present
Hmm.
day, present day local locations, present day time, and just sort of modernizing them. So then you get these really important aesthetic elements that go along with that artistic vision as the director of how are we modernizing this story to be relevant today, and
Yeah.
then obviously all of these aesthetic areas get pulled into that. So being able to sort of really articulate that vision well for everybody and then sort of get out of your own head and be receptive to feedback and collaboration, identifying where everybody's sort of strengths are and utilizing them. I would imagine that that's a major component to this.
Yeah, and I think that, and I'm a traditionalist when it comes to directing, because
Mm.
I absolutely love researching time periods and authenticity
Yeah.
of certain things, and knowing that information.
Hmm.
I think that the modernization of some operas, because of the lack of resources on the back end,
Mm.
because it takes a lot of money to create real of time period, right?
Yeah, of
So if I
course.
want to recreate 18th century Paris, that's a little bit more expensive
It's
than
a
Yeah, of
lot.
course.
recreating um, some sleek Manhattan penthouse
Right,
that can just have walls and a projection in the back,
right.
And
right?
what's interesting about that too is when I went to the Met, just to touch on this for a second, because it's funny you're talking about it. I think the first Met Opera I ever saw, which wasn't, it was only like some years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago, and it was La Traviata at the Met.
Yeah.
And Placido Domingo was singing.
Wow.
And of course, James and I were very pumped. My fiance and I, we were like, "Meh." And so we went, and I was expecting what you're saying, the traditional, but it was that production that I'm sure you know what I'm going to say with the clock. And obviously vocals fantastic, everything great, but for me, I feel like I was a little confused.
Mm.
Yeah, no, and for every director that, and I applaud people trying to reinvent because,
Sure.
but I also like reinventing for the sake of reinventing is not as satisfying to me because if your audience has to read the program notes in order to understand what's going on,
Mm.
then you have not done your job in transforming that world for them
Oh,
from
interesting.
the
Yeah.
moment that something comes up for me. Now, you go over to Europe, there are lots of different interpretations on that, and everybody's trying to push the creative narrative. Um,
Right.
some operas can be updated. Some operas, in my opinion, just kind of can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's more terrifying for a singer, I think, or for I'll just speak for myself, is the absence of state of actually scenery and props and
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
furniture. And
Right.
just you on the stage.
Yeah.
You're responsible for a 40-foot wide space with a
Right.
projection behind you.
Yeah.
Ugh. And I'm like,
It's
I've been,
brutal.
it's brutal. I like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to create an entire world
Sure. Sure. Well, because
for
once
the
you involve
audience.
acting into the equation, then you need scenery. I mean, how we behave is it has a lot to do with how we interact with our surroundings. So if you have no surroundings,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's why, like, even in podcasting, to do it on a video, it's much more interesting to see people to have those more animated responses than just hearing. And we're all old
See,
people.
watch us on YouTube, folks.
You watch
Yeah,
us on
watch,
YouTube.
watch.
But to your point, Jackie, like the cool thing about Traviata, and I never got to sing it. That was one of the regrets that I've never
Mm,
got a chance to
Mm.
do that. It's terribly difficult. But I did all the research and the details about that particular character. There's something called belladonna, which is what the courtesans would put in their eyes to dilate the pupils. And the reason why is because when people are naturally in love with one another, their
Your pupils dilate.
pupils dilate. And
right.
so the courtesans could chemically make this happen, then
Interesting.
gentlemen callers would be like, "Oh, she really likes me," right? And so having you, whether people notice that or not on stage,
Yeah.
if that's staged in, it gave the actress something specific to do at that time that just elevated
Mm.
what was done at that time period, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
But that's that's why I like traditional. I like to go back and kind of uncover the things that I don't do. But
Hmm.
modern day conventions as being a woman and historical opera also is
Hmm.
a difficult thing because we have modern opinions about
Yeah, right.
relationships, and we didn't have those rights or the right to have those opinions in
Right.
the 18th century
Right.
or
Or any
earlier.
way to voice them, sure.
right.
So how do you deal with students that are like, I would totally have left him. Like, why would I stick in this relationship? And he
Uh,
cheated on me. I mean, how many times at opera? And I said,
Yeah.
really, you don't know one friend who's ever been in a relationship today that goes back to a bad relationship? Not one.
Here's your PSA, ladies, to leave him. Okay. Sorry, I just leave him.
Don't be an opera. Don't be an opera. Don't go
Yeah,
back.
no, no, don't do it.
It's worth noting our entire country just did that.
Yeah. For another
I'll cut that out.
time. It's an opera waiting to happen.
That was
Let's
just for
say
me.
that.
Thank you,
We've
Marty.
had
Yeah,
opera
yeah.
made in China. We've
Hey,
had
well, Karen, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. That I wanted to make sure that we touched on today. Um, Modern operas, living composers working on operas. We had the Nixon in China. I think kind of started that, the sort of modern biography opera.
Hmm.
I'm not sure I can think of
You're
one
right.
really before that.
yeah, I think that's kind of like that biopic kind of moment. And then we had
Yeah.
JFK opera.
Yeah, now and then Steve Jobs, the Steve Jobs opera,
There
about
one
a
about
decade
Malcolm
ago.
X. Am I wrong about that or Muhammad
Malcolm X, and
Malcolm X? Right.
there's Mao Zedong, I think, is another one. Yeah, they're it's harder because as we're supposed to also be like blind, like when you do something specific of a specific person, biopic, the ability to be as diverse as we want to be in the musical world
Yeah,
has to be set very carefully. I'll just say
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So it's interesting. We did a modern opera last year, chamber opera by Evan Mack called "The Ghosts of Gatsby," which was about F. Scott Fitzgerald's
Hmm.
life, but more about his wife, Zelda,
Yeah,
and what actually happened in her life. So it was kind of nice to work with a living composer who's fabulous. Oh,
yeah.
just so interesting. And
What's
I
his
think
name?
Evan Mack.
Evan Mack. Okay.
And he is also he's a composer and up in upstate New York. But it's cool. For as much as I'd like to, resurrect Mozart or any of the other fine composers,
Yeah.
um, have a seance to speak with them, I fear what they might say to us, and what we've done to their music a little bit.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
not
that.
sure how. I don't know.
There's that.
I honestly think if Mozart was alive today, though, he would love this world. From what I know about Mozart, I think he would have a time.
He was a kid. From what I've
Well,
read
it's
in
like
the last.
that, that scene from Back to the Future where Mozart's playing on the synth keyboards in the Radio Shack. That's
Yeah.
exactly. I think there's some accuracy to that. I also think they would certainly be appalled with some of the more modern performance
For sure.
practices.
I was listening also just to the evolution of voice, of singers back in the time,
Yeah.
and today's modern singer, and it's really fascinating. Again, back to the acoustic responsibility of a 5,000 seat house versus a 500 seat house,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? In driving the voice, and as we know, opera doesn't have amplification for the vocalists at all. Um, the quality of voice, I was like, wow, that person probably would not have succeeded necessarily today
Mm-hmm.
in today's world about how their vocal technique was.
Mm.
And but
Because of the sizes of the houses, you mean? Like
yeah,
the general. Okay. Yeah.
size and inconsistency of some of the vocal stuff. But I do want to challenge everybody to keep the uniqueness of their instrument. The reason why we gravitate towards certain artists in our
Mm-hmm.
lives is because we can recognize exactly who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's the prettiest or just a distinctive timbre to
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
you do, that makes you you. Don't try to go sound like somebody else.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I want to know and then listen and be like, oh, that's blah 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 blah. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what made all music the most interesting thing as possible. Um, Running through studios and taking away the edges of anything, I think, is a disservice to our field
Sure.
because it also doesn't allow for the reality of a live performance
Mm-hmm.
to be embraced the same way.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pieces of advice to singers are when you go to listen to recordings, make sure
Hmm.
they're live recordings, not the
Oh
studio.
yeah, yeah.
Because I want to
That's
know
good
where people
advice.
have trouble being heard. I want to know where people have trouble making it through a phrase.
Mm,
I want to know
yeah,
where the ensemble trouble is.
yeah.
And you don't know that until you're in the middle of a live performance.
That's such great
You know where the
advice. Yeah,
pitfalls are.
It's
yeah,
great advice. No,
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if
Because you
I
know
don't
those
even know if I've ever
recordings,
gotten
you
that
never know what's
advice.
edited, what's the fourth take
Right?
of something, what's comped together from several different takes. So that's
I
great
remember
advice. Yeah.
listening to a recording of Susanna Carlyle by Carlisle Floyd and listening to these arias, and I'm like, she never breathes. She never breathes. How is and I would try to do that phrase. I'm like, I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I cannot make it through this
Yeah.
phrase.
So the editor just spliced them together,
Sliced it.
right?
I went to see that performer perform live, and
Just breathed
she
everywhere.
she breathed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my
Chris.
God, I've been torturing myself. I literally was like, I'm never gonna make it. I'm never gonna get hired for this because of that alone.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna think that I just am a breathing monster and I just, I have no technique. And the reality is you gotta breathe.
Of
No, you
course.
don't get extra credit for dying at the end of a phrase
Right.
just because you do it in one breath.
Yeah.
I always say that too. I mean, people think that circular breathing and whatnot is necessary. I always say I feel like unless the piece calls for it, music has to breathe anyway. And especially
Yeah.
I feel like as a vocalist, you're singing with text
Hmm.
most of the time.
Yeah, we need the commas and the periods they are to
Yeah,
make it for
yeah.
it to make sense.
All the
Yeah.
punctuation, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you need the feeling too. So if
Yeah.
I if somebody's voice quivers or cracks on something that's an emotional statement of what they're saying,
Hmm.
a cry, a text painting, perfection is not my goal at all.
It shouldn't be
Um,
anybody's.
it is absolutely just finding the truth in what you're singing and how
Yeah.
you're projecting that. By the way, Jean-Pierre Rampal was my first experience in circular breathing, and I
Oh,
remember at 11 years old sitting out there watching him with his gold flute and going,
uh,
oh my gosh. And that propelled me into a musical world that I would never be able to recover from.
Wow.
wow, that's amazing. I wish he was alive to hear that. I mean, I think he inspired so many musicians, not just flutists. I always like you were talking about transferring your knowledge and your skills. I think that it's also important for young people in this industry to know that there's so much to be learned, even if you play the flute like me or a vocalist such as yourself. That there's so much to be learned from the other disciplines. I have learned so much to transfer to flute from voice, from any vocal experience I've had, the relaxation you have to have in the throat and all of the parts of your body when I did body mapping at Montclair State.
Hmm.
And this is something I've taken with me for my whole career so far. There's a lot of elements of singing that I use to play the flute, and a lot of it has to do with breathing and support.
Hmm.
But I think that it's important for people to know that you're not just playing this instrument or singing this.
Yeah.
There's if you run, if you and any sort of physical activity as well.
Yeah.
It's important to transfer all of that, I think.
Yeah.
And Marty, as a conductor, you know the value of an amazing vocal conductor versus an instrumental conductor because not everybody can do like
Yeah.
want to
That's
do
certainly true.
everything, but
Yeah. Yeah.
a gesture, a vocal inspiring gesture, an articulated gesture, a breath
Yeah.
with your instrumentalists as if they were singing gives you a different kind of informed inhalation.
Hmm.
Um, when you have that information going in, it then wants to transfer on its expiration, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
an
That's very true.
informed breath, an
Hmm.
energized, an articulated, all those things, they're instrumental techniques and their vocal techniques
That's
that are
very
brought
true. Yeah.
together
Yeah.
by Maestro. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The other tip I will say, singers, do
Please.
not ever wave your hands in front of maestro saying, "Could you please do it like this?" And I was chastised once. Conductor said, "Do I pretend that I can sing?"
Ooh.
That's so funny you mentioned because I do know of a singer that regularly does that.
Yes, I maybe it was just that conductor, but now I approach all conductors with my hands behind my back so that I'm not have your conversations with
It's funny.
Maestro privately, not publicly, because that
It's good
information is better
advice.
received on both sides. Uh,
And that's good advice for the maestros out there as well.
well,
I
you
think
can
it's much more
single hand.
often that you get that egotistic conductor saying things in front of everybody that they should not be saying, that should be said in private. I think that you see that far more often than the
Yeah.
gutsy soprano who
Oh,
voices an opinion.
you can single-handedly cripple us
Yeah,
from being able to take a relaxed breath by the anticipation of critique.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the moment that anybody's locked up, you're not going to get what you want anyway.
That's right.
So
True.
you might have had that moment of just trying to articulate it, but at the end, the result at the end is again, what is it that you want to accomplish at the end?
I think that's a great way to bring us back to that little
Yes.
chestnut of you have to be able to hang. You need to
Yeah,
make sure that everybody in that room wants to work with you again someday
yeah.
when they leave that room.
I've worked with people. I've had directors that want to throw their power around, and this is, in a world that hopefully has evolved since I was on the stage a lot. The sense of this person of great authority and power, and thumbing down everybody else in order to keep themselves at the top. Um, I really hope the world has evolved from that, but there was a great period of time where it was just like, you will do what I say, you are not to question it.
Sure. And that was just sort of a cultural thing around, in terms of classical music culture. I mean, just a part of the mindset, I think, for a long time. And I think the unfortunate reality is that this field does attract the bigger egos. Because if you
It
have a big
does.
ego and your favorite thing in the world is your own voice and your own ideas, being up on a podium in front of 100 people, that's awfully attractive. And
Happens in public
we all see
education
it.
too.
We all recognize it right away.
Well, did
And
you see
it's
Whiplash? I'm sure you did. Did you see the movie Whiplash? Right.
oh,
I
that's the jazz drummer one, right?
Yeah.
Sure, sure.
held my breath through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And afterwards, my husband looked at me. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, uh, "So yeah, so that's." He goes, "Well, it's just a dramatization." I'm like, "Yeah,
No.
well, it wasn't." He goes, "Wait, people threw things?" I'm like, metaphorical, physical, I don't see that there's any difference to that." And
Yeah,
someone said, and again, the point of that movie is like, do you get the best out of, like, do you do you know how far you have to go to be the best at what you need to do? Um,
yeah.
Always a question, right? Not too bleeding
Right, right.
and all of that. So I think it's just really important that we do not stay in a comfort zone too
Sure,
long. We
sure.
got to try.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great advice.
My
I think
neighbors.
a cool place we could kind of wrap up is where do you see the world of opera going? Where is it headed?
I think as we traverse a variety of financial issues, and
Hmm.
everything comes down, opera is a business,
Yeah.
even in the academic world, academia is a business.
Hmm.
Totally.
Feels altruistic, but it's a business like
Hmm.
anything else, and you can't run a business without structure, without vision, without financial support.
Yeah.
And so the world of opera, I see that there are a lot more individual, smaller pop-up projects, more manageable financially,
Hmm.
uh, companies or situations, project situations popping up. Um, I see chamber opera being something that's more viable and sustainable
Hmm.
for smaller organizations because of that price point level. The orchestra costs less, the set costs less, the amount of people involved in it. Um, I think, unfortunately, our world kind of grew with these large organizations, but the sustainability of those large organizations, of everybody being able to do it, flooded the market. Same way with, sorry, even music schools. Everybody has a music program. Um, there's so many out there,
Yeah.
and we churned out an enormous amount of new musicians out there
Mm.
with not as many jobs to be had at the end
Yeah.
of the day. So how do you
A
navigate,
shame.
right? Um, I encourage my students to make productions happen for themselves,
Yeah.
um, because there's a waiting period until they get their first shot, gig,
Yeah.
whatever. And you don't want to get mentally rusty. You don't want to get physically or vocally rusty
Hmm.
waiting for that next thing. The mental game in all of it is a whole nother, like, that you have to keep up with that as well.
Right.
But the you see the Met has shrunk its season down from what it used to be.
Hmm.
Many opera companies are. When I was in shows, it was like 7 performances. Now we're with most regional companies, we're much less than that. Um, Again, things that people don't think about: production, uh, behind the scenes,
Yeah.
the people that are unionized within a house, how many productions, how many hours, how many, and we haven't even paid the singers. The singers actually probably paid the least amount of money of
I hate to
everything.
hear that, but it's so
Well,
I
and,
hate
and
about
navigating the
Broadway too.
unions is a big part of this field as well.
Yeah, so
Once you're out of your own boutique chamber spots and into the bigger houses, then you're dealing with the unions. Yeah.
and I think that allowing I know one of the classes that I teach at Montclair is in practicum, and I teach something that's called the business of music. Like, you have to understand all aspects of the business, because you'll be like, I don't understand why I can't blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you have this one costume travels through 5 people, and cleaning it,
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
costume, that cost of that one costume is now this amount of money, and I have, that's half of my budget. All right,
Oof.
so like,
Yeah.
you have to navigate that. What we need tremendously are people to get back in those seats. Seats don't drive as much revenue as you would want, but donations and
Yeah.
investment in the arts and grants and um, getting through the paperwork.
Yeah.
Um,
And people have to see it in order to get inspired to donate to it. That's a huge part of it too.
Yeah, yeah, people have to get out there
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
and for, like, we're doing Hansel and Gretel coming up, and I reached out into the community for a few children to be
Hmm.
part of the children's chorus.
Yeah.
Um, and I found a chocolate sponsor, and because it's Hansel and Gretel, I mean, who
Yeah, of
wouldn't?
course.
Yeah, you need that
And
Yeah.
candy.
finding creative ways to bring your community together where people weren't necessarily able to give a financial contribution, a product contribution, something that we give our audience members where they're going to get a chocolate lollipop at the end. So you guys got to come,
Okay.
just for the chocolate
Let us
alone.
know when it is.
Yeah.
December
Absolutely.
7th, 3
December
and 6.
7th.
Yeah. And then we're doing La Callisto in February at the beginning, the big main stage. But finding creative ways within
Yeah.
your fields to wrap in your community, I think
Yeah.
is key. Because then that also inspires the next generation
Yeah.
of students
Right.
reaching into the children's choir. Now they'll be on stage for this thing, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, um, this is what opera is." Nobody really knows what it is. I thought it was like Brunhilde, horns and
Yeah.
spears.
That's what people think for sure.
Sometimes it is.
And I think it's actually a other tiny little funny story. I was at a restaurant in downtown Montclair, and I was talking to a waiter, and he had a really great voice. I said, "Oh, you must be a baritone." He goes, "Yeah." Um, but not in school. I was in a production in Kansas City as one of the three boys in the Magic Flute. I
Oh
said,
yeah.
"What year?" And he said, "This year." I go, "Hang on a minute." And I scroll through my phone and I said,
Is that you?
"This one?" He said, "Wait, you were Pamina?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "That's me. That's me." And I mean,
Wow,
20
amazing.
Whoa.
years ago. And that single experience for him transformed his whole idea and understanding of what opera was about.
Yeah.
Of course.
So being at the ground level, finding different ways to reach out to the community, they're clever ways.
Yeah, right.
And it's not always financial. Sometimes it's just that an emotional buy-in
Yeah,
that can really sustain a company at
sure.
the end of the day too.
Wow.
Wow.
Karen, that's fantastic. And I think we've taken up too much of your time. We're so, so grateful that you
I
gave
have,
us so much
I
of
have
it.
another job to do. No,
A few.
I'm a
A few
production
other
call this
jobs.
Wow, thank you, thank you. Is
Thank
there
you so
anything else you wanted
much.
to say, or any other sort of parting
Any advice?
wisdom you wanted to leave? I wanted just to make sure you
um,
said everything that you wanted to say, or got get across. I think you offered up so much great wisdom this
yeah,
morning.
take or leave with any opinion that is given to you. Again, it's an opinion.
Yeah,
Um,
very true.
you can't let opinions define who you are. You can just, again, be informed by the information that's given to you.
Yeah,
Um, and, like, it's a numbers game for all those people that are pursuing anything in life. The only thing stopping you from actually applying or auditioning is you.
yeah,
Um, there's gonna, the answer is no if you don't do it.
that's right.
Um,
Yeah,
if you don't fill out the paperwork, you don't get the opportunity. This goes for compensation,
True.
goes for applications, this for grant money. Most
hmm
people self-select out because they don't want to be bothered with all of the stuff that you have to do. So
yeah,
be the person that does it.
right.
Then you've elevated yourself.
Exactly.
Um, you just don't know that one time if that's going to be the moment. So why would you want to miss it? Why would you want to miss that opportunity?
Well said.
I um, you do so many auditions, right?
Yeah,
Um, and you only need one, and then you string enough of those ones together, and then you get a streak. But you have
yeah,
to start from someplace.
yeah.
Um,
Can
and
you also, I'm so sorry, finish your thought, but when we're done, can you just say your name and what your job in music is? I want to try that and see if that's good. Like we can end that way. And I feel like that might be really cool. Like I am name and my job in music is whatever you want to say. So sorry, finish your thought and then at the end we'll do
what is my job in music? It's like everything, though.
Yeah.
that.
I
Yeah.
mean, uh,
Well, I
as much
loved what you said at the beginning. I thought that was
But I don't know if she considers that her job in music.
my
well. I think
my
you when you say that, I think that your interpretation of that is like, what is my responsibility to the craft?
my responsibility to the craft and what is my job in music. My job is to perpetuate an art form so the next generation and the current generation can have a place to go
Mhm.
and be transformed.
That's great.
And um, how we get there, multiple paths to the collective for that experience. But the last things I will just say: be nice to everybody. Be nice.
That's so
Uh,
important.
your
Right.
costume fitter can be mean to you if you're not nice to them. They can take your clothes in and make you feel fat. If they don't like you, they'll
Yeah.
sneak that in. Your lighting designer can throw you into darkness. Oops.
Yeah.
Nice to people. Um, you are a team, and your success is based on the success of the team, not the
That's right.
individual. That's it. It may seem glamorous to be that person out on front, but you are only as good as the everybody that's surrounding you.
Yeah, you're only as good
Village.
as you're only as good as how much the people around you want it to succeed.
And care
Yeah,
to have that
right,
craft.
right.
It's not as glamorous as you would think. My husband, when he first met me, he came down to Palm Beach and he's like, "Oh, I'm sure you have dinner out every single night." I'm like, "No,
No,
I'm paying for the hotel room, which is very expensive, instead of being in cooperating housing." He's like,
yeah.
"Well, how do you eat?" I'm like, "Well, there's a coffee pot over there. I heat up water and I put couscous in it." And so couscous in a coffee pot was going to be my first memoir. He's like,
Couscous in a coffee
"What?
pot. I love it.
The perfect
Life?"
title. Yeah, you got to do that. Next project for Karen Driscoll.
Or the name of the opera that will one day be written about you, Karen.
Oh, I
Also a
we
cool
Ooh.
name for an opera.
I tried to commission an opera. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about that process too.
Mm.
So, but yeah, try everything. I like how do you know you don't like something? Marty, you have little kids. Do
Oh, we say that every day. How do you
right?
know you don't like it if you
How
won't
do you
try
don't
it?
like it if you haven't tried it?
That's right.
That's right.
That's
When
right.
I was like, oh, I can't do Baroque music. Well, I hadn't really tried it, and then I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's really healthy. Um, that's a lot of recit. There's some things that are difficult about it, but you can't have an informed opinion until you've actually informed yourself.
No, that's great.
Right.
Great
Oh,
note.
Karen, thank you so much. This was a
Thank
lot
you,
of fun.
Karen. This was
Yeah.
great. Great to meet you.
Great to see you around, and good
Yeah.
luck with everything. You're off into the right direction of craziness and
Yes. Well, this
chaos.
is a little experiment. We're going to see what happens with it.
We're rolling with it.
Yeah,
We're gonna
absolutely.
keep going.
Like I look forward to hearing the additional interviewees going forward, and you'll probably start hearing that trend of um, uh, where commonality for all of us. At the end of
We're
it.
already seeing the common threads. Just in you're our third one,
Very interesting.
and
Yeah.
we're already seeing the common threads that are going to
I
be
Mhm.
in
should have
every
gone
episode.
totally different than
No,
No, no,
no.
no.
Who
I think
knows?
that's the point. I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
going to
perfect.
drive the most important points home for people who are listening. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well,
all right.
thank you again. Enjoy the rest of
Thank
your day.
you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Talk to you guys soon. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Karen. Bye bye.
Bye. Wow.
Karen Driscoll, lovely, lovely lady. Such a
Karen Driscoll.
fantastic singer, and now has sort of evolved, I'll say, into this opera direction field, which is just fascinating. I mean, you think about operas; they really are just entire films without the cameras.
I was gonna say
It's the
it's a
only
movie
thing that's
live with
yeah,
a
it's
lot
a
of
it's a
singing.
movie live. Yeah, without the cameras, it's the only difference.
And
And
she
really
was
well done.
I thought it was funny, Marty, that just as like you said, there's so many common threads so far with this is our third guest,
Yeah,
and which we're like moving along here. But I think that one thing that she had very much in common with Alex Deason, which
mm.
if you haven't listened to that one, what are you doing?
You better.
What are you doing? But anyway, is that failure is coming.
Failure is coming.
Failure
Try to
is
be happy.
coming. Yep. So that's yeah, she was an extremely just varietal person. She does
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot. She does a lot. She's a busy person.
yeah.
Very cool.
Very
I liked her a
inspiring, I
lot.
thought. Yeah, and some really cool insight into just the wild world of actually producing operas.
Yeah, like I mean, what goes into it if you're a musician such as us. And you probably know more than me because you're a vocalist, trained vocalist, but I mean, it's deep. Opera is very, very deep.
Should we sign off with our best opera notes? Ready?
Oh God.
Do it together.
Okay, let's see how
Ready?
high I get. Okay.
1, 2, 3. Oh, you're not singing, or are you? And it's not picking up. I only hear myself.
I am. No, I heard you. Oh, I touched my mic. I think it was so high that it possibly didn't register.
Oh, good for you. Technology
Maybe.
can't even keep up with JB's range.
I don't know if that's true. Also, don't at me with my singing. Okay, people, don't at me.
Safe space. Safe space.
Safe space. It was great.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you at the next one.
Like and follow for more.
And at the end of the opera, they die.